Hello, welcome to lesson 2 in our series on Judaism Beliefs and Teachings. Today's lesson is on God the Creator and Sustainer. Our objectives today are to understand the Jewish belief that God is the Creator and the Sustainer, and understand how this relates to the concepts of evil and free will. Our need to know today is that you need to know that Jews believe that everything comes from God, that He willed the universe into creation and controls it and sustains it by His will today. Last lesson we learned that Judaism is a monotheistic religion. Hopefully you remember that means they believe in one God. And we see that in the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Because the Lord is one, because Jews believe in one God, they believe that He is the source, the creator of every single thing that comes our way, that every single thing that exists. Nothing exists that God hasn't chosen to exist. Nothing exists that He hasn't willed into being. We see that in the first verse of the Bible there, Genesis 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That doesn't mean heaven. He created heaven, then He created earth. The heavens is everything you see above you and everything you see below you. In the beginning, God created everything. According to the Bible, there are 6 different stages of creation. In our Bibles, it's recorded as day 1, day 2, etc. There's discussion as to whether they're literal days or not. The word in the Bible in Hebrew is yom, which simply means period of time. That can be a second, a minute, 10 minutes, a year, 10 years, 1,000 years, etc. We're going to have a look now at the different stages, and I'm going to read to you from the book of Genesis as to each part of that process. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters He called sea. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let there be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the great light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 4th day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the 5th day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. The heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day, and he made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating he had been doing. So that's the whole story of creation straight from Genesis. I'm going to give you an easy way to remember it now. The way I remember it is God separates for 3 days and then fills for 3 days. So he separates light from dark. He separates sky from sea. He separates land from sea. And then he fills those 3 things in that order. So he then fills the darkness with lights, the sun, moon, and stars. He then fills the sky with birds and the sea with fish. And he then fills the land with animals and humans, who he makes in his own image. Now, Jews believe that through creation, God reveals himself. So you can look at creation and you can understand more about God. And that he continues to sustain the universe as it is. So Jews actually, as part of their daily prayers, they pray every single day that God's creation would continue. As well as being revealed through creation, though, it's important to remember that Jews say that God is incomprehensible to the human mind. So even though we can kind of get a little bit of an idea about what God is like, we can't really fully understand him because of his mystery. So let's pause here and check your understanding. Some questions for you to have a go at. Number 1, explain the Jewish idea of God as the creator. Describe the Genesis creation story in as much detail as you can remember, and hopefully that clue I gave you will help you to remember that. Explain why Jews believe that God is one. Explain how belief that God created the world might influence how Jews live their lives. And an extension there, how do you think the different groups of Jews that we looked at last lesson interpret that story we've just looked at? Okay, now you've had a chance to have a go at those questions. Let's look at some answers. So, explain the Jewish idea of God as the creator. Very simply, Jews believe that because God is one, everything that exists because of him. He has created everything, including the universe and everything in it. Number 2, hopefully you remember that trick I gave you to remember this. Separate, 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 fills, fills, fills. He separates light from dark. He separates sea from sky, land from sea, and then fills. So he fills the darkness with lights, the sun, moon, and stars. He fills the sea with fish and the sky with birds, and he fills the land with animals and humans made in his image. Jews believe that God is one because in the Shema it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And there's more teachings about that all through the Tanakh and the Talmud. And the belief that God creating the world, well, that's likely to influence Jews to want to look after the world. There's a very important Jewish belief we're going to look at eventually called Tikkun Olam, which means healing the world. And most Jews see it as their responsibility to do their part in healing the world and making it harmonious and perfect as it should be. And then thinking back to last lesson, we talked about Orthodox Jews and Reform Jews. And if you remember, Orthodox Jews were those who like to keep things the same as much as possible and not change Judaism. Reform Jews being those who are happy to change it to fit the culture. And actually a lot of Jews today, they don't take a literal translation of Genesis, but instead believe in evolution and the Big Bang, etc. However, Orthodox Jews are more likely to read Genesis literally, and that would be the main difference there. Let's move on. A key scripture comes from Isaiah 45 verses 6 to 7. It says, "So that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting, people may know there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form the light, and I create darkness. I bring prosperity, and I create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things." This is a really important passage to understand a Jewish idea of God. And effectively, as we looked at the beginning from our need to know section, Jews believe that everything comes from God. He wills everything into being. So you can see there from the scripture, I form the light and I create darkness. I bring prosperity and I create disaster. So all the circumstances that Jews find themselves in, they would assume they came from God, because nothing happens without God's say-so and his knowledge and his will. This is a difficult one, potentially, because when someone's going through suffering, to stop in that suffering and accept that God's allowing that suffering to take place can be a real struggle, This brings us to the topic of free will, the idea that God has given each of us the gift, which is the ability and the responsibility to make our own moral decisions. That even though God's in control and he puts us in circumstances, it's then up to us, it's up to humans, how we live, how we make decisions in those circumstances. Jews believe that we're supposed to look to God's commandments, his instructions, so that we know how to use that free will. Let's pause there for a few questions. Moving on from the ones you've done already. Number 5, why do you think many people find it hard to accept that God is in control of evil? Number 6, explain what is meant by God as the sustainer. Number 7, the world would be a much better place without free will. Do you agree? Explain your answer and consider more than one point of view. And then an extension question, do you think a loving God would allow people to suffer? Why or why not? That brings us to the end of this lesson. Let's look back at our need to know. Jews believe that everything comes from God, that he willed the universe into creation, and he controls and sustains it by his will. Do you understand that sentence? Can you unpick that and fully explain what it means? See you next time.